And welcome back. It is Extreme Results Radio. David Ruben and Baron Baptiste. We're talking about perception versus reality. We're breaking it down for you because if you want to understand why you keep doing the same things over and over again, expecting a different outcome, it's because your thoughts are in the way. That's an essential paradigm that you have to begin to understand and explore. Talking about, this thing that happened with my mother-in-law, and she's a wonderful lady. But once a person gets an idea implanted in their mind, those ideas can stay with us all of our lives. And Baron, I'll give you an example, and then I'll get your feedback on this. I did a seminar about a month ago, and at the seminar, I was talking to a famous violin player who started lessons at the age of 4 years old. And I said, whose idea was it for you to play the violin? And of course, it wasn't her idea at 4 years old. It was her mother's idea. And I said, did you enjoy playing the violin? Well, of course, in the very beginning, it was very difficult. There was a lot of pressure, expectations. I mean, here's a parent that wants their child to succeed and to be accomplished. And so, of course, there's pressure. She's been playing now 29 years, and she's quite extraordinary. But she said, now that I've learned how to become less emotional and more objective, I have a whole new capacity for playing music. I hear myself before I start to make a mistake on a note. And so she's now playing in an objective mind rather than a subjective mind, because in the back of her mind for many years, all she could hear was that pressure source telling her, you've got to do better, you've got to be better. And so most of us carry these pressure sources with us all of our lives in the form of a belief system, which we call BS, a belief system. And that if we don't begin to identify that a lot of what we have come to believe is not only inauthentic, it's not authentic to us. And of course, look, we all need guidelines from the time we're children. If parents didn't tell us what to do, it would be like the Lord of the Flies. Everything would be helter-skelter. So we do need guidelines and guidance and nurturing from parents. But at the same time, once we adopt an idea that comes from outside of us, and then it gets on the inside, in a sense, not only do we now have a thought that is guiding us from an external source, but now we begin to unconsciously defend that thought. And we build stories around those thoughts. And we try to convince ourselves that those thoughts are really our own. What do you think about that?
Maybe speak a little more to that, will you? I think you're onto something that really has a profound impact when understood.
Well, I'll use myself then as an example, because a lot of time in relationships, when we're children, there are power struggles within the family. And in my particular situation, when I was a child growing up, there was not a real synchronicity in terms of the way my parents had different views about how to raise children. And on my mom's side of the family, she came from a very sort of a doctrinaire kind of family, very structured, very strict. On my dad's side of the family, it was more loose and not as structured and more, intuitively based. And so there was always a struggle. And so whenever there would be a conflict, I would find myself emotionally identifying with my mom when her and my dad would get into conflicts. And so as a result of that, I saw my mom as being sort of a victim, and I felt sorry for her. I felt sympathy. And the word sympathy actually is derived from the meaning of to feel the same. What happened to me was that I started to have more of an identification with my mother because I felt sympathy for her, because I felt like, well, she's not being treated fairly. And so I had to eventually come to a realization in my life where I could see that part of me had problems with my dad, not because of problems that I had with him, but because of problems that he was having dealing with things in his relationship, which everybody has these kinds of problems. But I saw, as I started to become an objective person, I started to become more aware of my own processes that were going on in my head. I started to see that I had thoughts that were there that did not belong to me, that in fact had come into me as a result of things that had happened to me in my early childhood, that I was still carrying forward on a daily basis, and that I was reacting and responding to life as if I were still in an older mindset, 10 years old, when I was a teenager. And I started to say, my God, this isn't even me. And so I started the process of meditation. And this meditation, and you and I both understand this meditation, it's a concentration exercise where you learn how to sit and learn to be objective to your thinking. And as I began to pull back away from what I thought were my thoughts, my feelings, I began to see that they weren't in fact my thoughts and feelings. And that, in fact, those thoughts and feelings were making me act as a puppet. That there was almost like a puppet here pulling my strings. And I saw myself as being inauthentic, and that was a huge breakthrough for me. I kept doing the same thing over and over again, wondering, why am I doing this? Why do I keep making the same mistakes over and over again? At least I had that much awareness to ask myself, why do I continue to fail in certain areas of my life? And then I could see, well, it's because it really wasn't me who was at the core of why I was doing it. There were ideas and beliefs about myself and about life that were causing me to be motivated out of an inauthentic source. Does that help you any?
Yeah, it really does. And to come to a more authentic source, what had to occur for you? Was it a matter of discovering, having certain revelations? Was it a matter of telling the truth in certain areas or to certain people in your life?
Let me stop you right there.
Beginning with yourself even,
That's
telling
right.
the truth to yourself.
I did. That's what I had to do. I had to tell the truth to myself, or at least I had to let myself see the truth, whatever that truth was about me. I think that at some level we all have a sense of discomfort about who we are. And that comes in the form of various kinds of anxiety. I mean, there's a new term, it's called social anxiety disorder, where people don't feel comfortable in groups of other people. Psychiatry and psychology have coined all of these different kinds of conditions now as being sort of illnesses. But when we're uncomfortable with who we are, it's because at the root of that, there's something wrong with what we have become. In other words, we aren't fully present. The person that you call yourself, there's something in the way of you being able to push past that to the person that you want to be, to being comfortable in a group of people, to being able to stand up for yourself when somebody's bullying you, and so on. And so what I had to start doing was I had to start seeing that I was really full of resentment when I was a younger man, when I was a teenager.
Right.
And I knew that resentment was hurting me. It was hurting my relationship with my dad and my family. It was causing me to be self-destructive. So what I had to do is I had to excavate. I love that word that you use, excavate. I had to look down into myself and see what is at the core of this identity crisis that I have. I knew that it wasn't me. I could see that there was another potential me that wanted to emerge from within me, but there was something blocking it. And that something was I kept reacting to my environment. I kept reacting to all these different things in my outside world that kept causing me to act out old behaviors. Mm-hmm. Can you give me a quick hit on that? We'll come back and do another segment.
Well, somewhere in Russia, they have these boxes. There's a big box. You take the lid off. There's another box. You take the lid, and they keep getting smaller and smaller. But I think it's almost what you're describing in a lot of ways. Life is like that, just a series of taking off the lids and stepping out of boxes. And it's all based in, as you can see, the truth, as the greatest teacher who ever lived said, know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. And when you know the truth, each time it's like taking off a lid.
That's beautiful. Hold that thought. We got to go for a break. It's Extreme Results Radio. Don't go away. We'll be right back.